Hey, we're Saints. Father Chris here. Welcome to our Crucifixional live stream. Glad to have you with us. This week we've been talking about the black eye that I got while on vacation in the Grand Caymans. But here's the good part of that. If anyone is able to guess, throw your guess, put it in the commentary section, wherever it is. If you can guess how I got this bad boy, we will give to you for free Understanding the Bible. That's our series. It's our flagship program to teach scripture in very clear, concise, and understandable ways. Many people are like, I want to read the Bible, Father, but I don't always get it. Like, it's confusing and all, sometimes it's even intimidating. Help me. Well, we did. We created Understanding the Bible, which you can find there. We just released Revelation, it's awesome. Forgive me for the arrogance of it, but it's so good. It's explaining really properly, within the proper Orthodox context, what the heck the book of Revelation is actually saying. Not this voodoo, guru, mystical, end of the world crap that you hear peddled out there by certain individuals. It's what Revelation is actually saying. It's awesome. We did good work with it. So if you want it, take a guess. See if you can figure out. All right. Yesterday, we talked about the ladies. We're talking about marriage and family life. That's kind of our theme for the foreseeable future. And we talked about the ladies, the wives, being submissive to their husbands. As Paul says in Ephesians chapter 5, wives be subject. He doesn't actually say submissive, right? He says be subject, order, taxis. The Greek word is hypotasome, meaning order, like a military order almost, right? There's the general and the other ranks. Now we're going to transition into the understanding of husbands. And it's always funny. I always giggle, particularly at weddings where there are many, American-minded, feminist-minded men and women, because when they hear the epistle read at marriages, they get irritated. You hear wives be subject to your husbands. Do you still have that up there? Can you throw that text in there? So wives be subject to your husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife as Christ is the head of the church, right? So they hear, what? He's the head? This is America and it's the 21st century and women can be free and lead themselves and they can even live on their own and have jobs. And yes, right? Absolutely, right? But in that is arrogance. Because I am independent. I can do and be whatever I want to do and be, right? Okay, Adam and Eve, that's how we got into this mess in the first frickin' place. Do you understand that? It's that arrogance and that ego that leads to estrangement from God, which is why St. Paul says, ladies, submit to your husbands. Let's get that ego in check. Yes, you can do whatever you want. Yes, you can be whatever you want. Yes, you could be, like we talked about yesterday, Kamala Harris ran for the president of the United States. I know that she didn't win, but my point is, she almost did. Well, not almost, but she could have, right? Like, you can be anything if you get out there and get it, right? But in order to humble yourself, to remind you that you belong not to you, Adam and Eve, but to God, let's put women to be subject to the husbands, right? Now, today we transition because the husband's like, yeah, my woman, right? Like that whole kind of stuff that we all used to deal with in the 50s, whatever. I wasn't born in the 50s, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like the idea of, hey, woman, go get me a sandwich, right? You can see where fellas start to get arrogant with it. But Paul is not going to let them get away with this arrogance either. Just as the woman can't be Adam nor Eve, neither can the husband, right? And he does so by saying, husbands, you must love your wives, right? So in the very next verse, husbands, though you may be the head of the household, love your wife. But the question really is, how does a husband love? One of the things that we often hear, especially in this, modern context with, stroking language that makes us feel good, it's love, right? Love is, I feel like this beautiful love, right? And the girls get mad about it. What, I have to submit and all he has to do is love? And I respond with, what is the matter with you? All he has to do is love? See, in your mindset, forgive me, because most of you probably are Americans, and by that I mean you think as an American. I don't care about your citizenship. You think in Western mind, Platonic-minded ways. Love becomes a feeling, an ideal, an emotion, right? And that's nice. I have that emotion for my wife sometimes. Really all the time. She has it for me most of the time. Sometimes she gets mad at me, right? But it's an emotion, a feeling. It does not do the business. It does not get it done. And what I want you to know most importantly in the Greek text is that love is most often used as a verb. It's an action. Right? It's not something you feel. Your feelings are great, but you also know they come and go. They can be fleeting. The verb, love, is to do the right thing even when you don't want to. Love is doing the right thing and being sacrificial even when you don't feel like doing it. Does that make sense? That's what love is. And so when he calls Paul calls men to love their wives, he does so as Christ loved the church, right? So you don't just get to love her in your, American platonic, I love her. No, you got to do the business, baby. And how did he do it? As Christ loved the church. How did Christ love the church? He gave himself for it. You understand that? Wives, your humbling comes by submitting to your husbands. Husbands, your humbling comes by being willing to die, if necessary, even literally, for your wife. Do you understand that? It's a much higher calling and a much higher humbling. You, oh man, in your arrogance, trying to be Adam and Eve, do not get to be Adam and Eve. You must humble yourself before the Lord. How do you do that? You love your wife even at the cost of your own life, if necessary. And I pray that that's not necessary. God willing, it is not necessary. But regardless, if necessary, you will die for her. Now, to put that in practical terms, okay, what does that even mean? I'm going to give you a silly example. I use it often because it's silly, and you've probably heard me say it. But as you know, Warrior Saints, we teach every day, all day, all the days. And we talk a lot. Some of us way more than other people, right? But at the end of the day, when I go home after a long day of teaching and being online and communicating with people, honestly, I'm going to just say it. I want to go home and sit on the couch and I want a sandwich and I want to watch the Laker game and then I want to go to bed, right? I don't want to get into more talking. It needs to shut down. I need to recover. But there's a woman at home who has been fighting her fight all day long in her career and job, with our children, with the house, whatever she gets herself into. And she wants to have conversation with her husband. And so what happens? We sit at the table, TV goes off, and we communicate. Now, in that, it may seem silly, but what I've done is sacrifice my need and my desire in order to do for her what she needs. She has become my priority. Okay, I'm the head of my family. Fine, die for her. Right? And in that simple story of sitting at the table and having a conversation, I am doing that very thing. Thank God, not at the actual cost of my life, thanks be to God, but you see the point I'm making here. This is what it means to love as Christ loved the church. The willingness to be, here's the word, crucifixional, to sacrifice yourself for the sake of another. To sacrifice your desire in order to do God's will, which is to love another person. Do you follow that? This is how marriage works. And so, husbands, absolutely. Ladies, you've got to do the same thing, right? There are some times where my bride has to look at me and say, oh, he's had one of those days. I'm going to make him a sandwich and leave him alone on the couch to watch the game, right? Even though she may need to have that conversation, she's got to be crucifixional for me as well. Here's the thing. When you do that, when both of you, husbands and wives, are willing to love one another at the cost of your own life, the cost of your own desires and needs to be crucifixional, baby, that's when it works. That's when it works. Yesterday, I started the whole thing with, the statistics on marriage being, divorce rate being so high and some people not even getting married, right, which would contribute to that number. And why is this happening? Really, I think the answer to that is because one or neither of the people within marriages are willing to be crucifixional, right? Everything in the world is telling you be selfish. Well, that don't get it done. So take your pick, right? You can get into a marriage and have a nice party and wear a fancy dress and a tuxedo and then be miserable because you're so darn selfish. Or you can follow what Apostle Paul is telling us and be crucifixional in your marriage and have a great one. Not a good one, a great one. Maybe that's what we'll talk about tomorrow. I love you, beautiful people, right? So here's the key. Be crucifixional in your lives. First, because God has asked you, He said to you, hey, you want to be where Christ is? Take up your own cross and follow Him. That's what that means. What you do with that is your choice. But also, you do that within your marriage. And I promise you, we're going to talk about tomorrow, but if you do that within your marriage, it is wicked awesome, to quote our Bostonians. It's great. That's how marriage should work. That's how God has designed it. And it really is a beautiful thing. All right, we will be back tomorrow to talk about that very thing. In the interim, here or in the meantime, guess. See if you can guess. I got a black eye while I was on vacation in the Caymans. No, my wife didn't punch me. Somebody even guessed that, but of course not. But it's a very interesting story about how I got it. If you can guess it, that's yours for free. If you don't care about free, get here. UTB. It is fabulous. All right, I'm done. I love you. We'll see you tomorrow. As always, keep walking on the way of the Warrior Saint.